Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call our public hearing to order. Looks like the Matthew people are not here yet, so we will, oh, you are here. Okay, very good, sir. You can go. Okay, first of all, we'll have Aaron read the notice of the public hearing.
Please take notice that an application has been made by Dennis Goldberg of Matthew Construction Company, 920 10th Avenue, North Onalaska, Wisconsin, 54650, for an interim use permit for a temporary bituminous plant in the Agricultural Protection District in Mayville Township. Said applicants standing to make the application are as fee owners of said described lands. A hearing on this application will be held at the Houston County Justice Center basement, City of Caledonia, Minnesota, 55921 at 7 p.m. on Thursday, June 16, 2016. All persons having an interest in the matter will be given the opportunity to be heard relative to the granting or denying of said application. This was advertised on June 2nd, 2016. The application package that was submitted was passed along to you along with a synopsis of the information contained therein and a couple of emails that went back and forth that clarified aspects of the application between myself and the folks in Mackey. They're looking at setting up a temporary asphalt plant in the Gangwood quarry. The purpose of which primarily is to produce the asphalt needed for the County Road 14 project. The Township Board has been notified, as have 10 nearest neighbors, and we have not received any comments. The site is located in an existing quarry, 55 acres in size. The quarry operates with a conditional use permit from Houston County. It will be accessed via County Road 32. I guess I'll ask the applicant if there's additional information that you want to provide before I answer questions.
Chad Kelly from Matthew Construction. Albert is here.
Excuse me, what was your first name?
Chad Kelly.
Chad Kelly.
Matthew Construction. Yeah, we're here requesting a permit for dry asphalt paving in County Road 14 project. Our anticipated start date will probably be in August.
Chad,
Our start date would be early to mid-August for that project. Probably be here roughly a month. This is what we'd be looking at.
Okay, any questions from the Planning Commission?
This is pretty standard procedure for you, isn't it?
Yes.
Was there any thought to using the Gillen quarry that's right off of 14 on the climb the road to get back up there? That you don't own that.
Yeah, I don't believe we own that one.
That's probably the reason.
I want all of you to pull the microphone up when you speak into the microphone. Okay, any other questions from the Planning Commission?
I have a few questions. Okay, on your application, you listed plant number 52,
Yes.
and you show specifications for plant 66.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, initially when we made the schedule, we thought Plant 52 would be available to come to the project. The bidding process ongoing throughout the season. Plant 66 is the plant that would be available for the project. So
Basically the same?
Correction would be Plant 66 would be our plan. Yeah, configurations approximately same, so same type of plan.
Another question having to do with alternate routes from Highway 14 back to the quarry. I'm not sure if you're aware of, there are several township roads, I guess you'd call them, connect 14 to 249, which will take you back to the quarry site. I guess my experience on these roads are very narrow, lots of corners. I guess I'd recommend not have any truck traffic on those routes, if at all possible. Has that been looked at all?
I'm a little unfamiliar with the project, even though it becomes down to that, so I see on the map that we have a haul route established.
Yeah.
they go back into town there and walk by.
Right. I guess my recommendation would be is that all truck traffic be restricted to the Highway 14 project.
Okay.
Okay. There will be local traffic through the whole project?
Yes,
Okay. And one lane of traffic?
yeah, with flagging operations.
Okay. Also, you said the operating hours would be 5 to 9. Is that for the plant, or is that for actually laying of the asphalt? Or?
So yeah, plant operations 5 to 9. Typically during the summer, we're working whatever daylight hours we have available to lay down on the road.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, when you said you want a truck traffic confined to 14, what do you mean?
Well, let's say, for example, an emergency situation came up where for some reason you might have trucks traveling these alternate routes. I guess my suggestion would be is try to restrict that as much as possible. Like I said, these routes are very narrow roads, hilly roads, lots of corners, blind corners, so I'm not suggesting a condition, but I'm just a recommendation that truck traffic be confined to the Highway 14 as much as possible.
Any other questions from the planning commission? Okay, is there anyone here tonight in the public has any comments about this application or questions? Okay, if not, Aaron, will you read the findings for interim permits?
The planning commission shall not recommend an interim use permit unless they find the following. And I guess what I'd like to do here is I'd like to read the condition and open it up to the members of the planning commission to share their thoughts on why that condition is met or not met. So number one, that the proposed use conforms to the county land use plan.
Any comments on that? I would say yes, it does. We need roads, we need a blacktop.
Okay.
Any other comments?
When I looked at this, it specifically thought it applied to this language contained in the comprehensive plan to encourage the development of a transportation system which properly balances considerations of it. That the applicant demonstrates a need for the proposed use.
Excuse me. I think that's pretty much the same thing. We need to have roads, and we need to have decent roads, and by putting the plant close to where they're going to use it, it could be more economical and environmentally friendly.
That the proposed use will not degrade the quality of water in the county.
Any comments on that? Okay, what protections do you have set up down there? So in case you had a spill at that plant, this is going to be in the Gingman Quarry, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be close to the creek there. So how do you have that set up to prevent any contamination getting into the creek?
Yeah, so we've got containment, double wall containment on our tanks. So in that for the spill would have to reach both layers of the shell essentially.
So the oil,
And the oil.
explain that, how that oil is hauled in, is pumped into the plant?
Yeah, so we use tanker trucks to bring in the AC. It's warm when it comes in, so it's all in state. When they back up, there's a container on the back end of the truck there, build some bergs. The spill there is contained within there. The nature of asphalt is once it cools off, it solidifies,
Yeah.
so it's not going to flow readily in a fashion where it's going to get away from us, I guess, if you will. And if it is spilled, it's just cleaned up. It cools off, solidifies, and we can split it up.
And so you're also burning fuel oil there to heat the asphalt at the site?
Yes, it is.
Can you bring that in with tanker trucks also?
Yes, and that's their double wall tanks as well.
And the whole area is berms around there, so nothing can
Yep,
get
those
in.
berms,
Yeah, how far away are you from the creek?
I'm not exactly sure what the footage is, but we're back in the quarry there.
That's why we, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Any other questions?
Can you expand on the highly trained response? Mrs. Bill?
Yeah, so all our plant operators are trained in spill prevention, spill containment. So the guys on site would be monitoring that.
I think he's referring to an email exchange that I included in the package where Tara Retzel, in response to a very similar question, I said that additionally, we conduct spill training for all of our plant operators and maintain an in-house staff of responders that maintain spill training certification according to National Preparedness for Response Concise Prep Program, which is a Coast Guard program, I believe, which sounds fancy and and sufficient, I thought. Maybe you're wondering what exactly that means in practical language.
Yeah, I would have to probably defer that more to Tara. She's more of an expert on that, but we do retain people in order, if we do have a spill, in order to respond to that.
Okay.
And this is a similar one, so perhaps we just refer to the previous answer, but the proposed use will not adversely increase the quality of water runoff.
I think that's answered, yeah.
That potential pollution hazards have been addressed and that standards have been met.
Any questions on that?
And they are meeting several standards that are state or federal, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm sure you have the BCA rules that you have to comply with.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities have been or are being provided.
I think that goes to Ed's question with the local township roads to avoid them when at all possible.
That the interim use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted. And in terms of the purposes that are already permitted in that area, it's in a permitted quarry. There's a quarry across the highway, and there's agricultural land surrounding that. So that's what we're considering when we talk about it being injurious.
Okay. Any other comment on that?
That adequate measures have been or will be taken to prevent or control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibrations, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance, and to control lighted signs and other lights in such a manner no disturbance to neighboring properties will result.
Any questions on that?
How close is your closest neighbor, you know, residents?
I do not.
I believe it's over a quarter of a mile, and it's not on that same, you would go cross-country to reach the closest
All
neighbor.
right. So I would think there wouldn't be any issue there.
And finally, that site-specific conditions and such other conditions are established as required for the protection of the public's health, safety, morals, and general welfare.
Any questions on that?
I would suggest two conditions for your consideration. First, that they follow all applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations. And secondly, that we set the end date of this. They're asking for a 90-day permit, that we add a 20% contingency and set an end date of November 17th, just in case there's any postponement of work for any reason. We wouldn't be looking at extending, I need to extend the permit to fill that in.
What do you think of that, Mr. Keller?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
November 17th,
Yep.
be done by that point. Okay, any other comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion. But
I'll make a motion that we recommend granting of the interim use permit with the 2 conditions that Aaron stated.
recommend approval of it, recommended, we send it out to the county board, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, is there a second to it?
I'd second that.
Seconded by Rick. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll abstain.
Oh, Bob abstained. Okay. Okay, motion carries. This will go to the county board, which will be when? When will it come up? June 28th, county board. Okay?
All right,
Yep, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes? We'll approve the minutes, the zoning permits here quick.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion made to approve the minutes, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bob. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, how about the zoning permits? Any questions on those?
Just one, just in general, I assume that all of these have gone through town boards, actually, before we get it. Is that the case, right?
Yeah, all applications require a signature from a town board official before we consider.
So like in these structures that a deck is being built on, in the case of 4464 there, is that a cabin, is that a house? Is that, you know what that is? Is that a approved structure? Cabin, maybe for zoning, okay.
Yeah, for one of the issues we're maybe going to be tackling later would deal with the permitting on parcels that are not conforming. We don't knowingly do that now, but if someone's coming in for something that I would put on the spectrum as a smaller project, they can be very frustrated if they can't get a permit for instance, a deck for something that's not permitted. But we look at what the rules were when it was put in. So if something was put in pre-zoning,
It would be non-conforming.
right. We allow those to reasonably.
Okay, but is that the only structure in that quarter?
Which specific?
Black Hammer Township, 4464, Charles.
I would have to get back to you on that.
So is this going to be something that's permanently lived in?
Rick's been working with them for about a year.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I just like finishing up.
So it's going to be used as a seasonal cabin?
There's a floodplain issue?
Well, they had to check in with.
I believe they had to do a formal certification that it was above the baseline elevation, but I'm not.
Well, no, it just brought to mind whether or not it was attached. There's an issue in a floodplain. Because they have different requirements if it's attached to the building.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to get some additional information on that specific project. Again, it's not one that I
Okay.
don't.
Well, and I don't know if you need to bring it back, we can accept it, but just be aware that that can be an issue.
Yeah, maybe just check out a little further before that goes to the county board.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that being said, Dana.
I have one question.
Yeah.
4468 Julie Chapman, David Gardner, build a house. That house was moved from Spring Grove, I don't know if you know that. Does that make a difference on our ordinance? It says build a house, but that got moved in. That's the one they're talking, is that right, Aaron?
This, the Jason Schrader project.
No, the Chapman project. Gardner.
4468. house came from Spring Grove across the street.
Is it a new site?
It's not handled any differently than it would be.
That's my question.
It's still a 1 per quarter applies. It's all the same setbacks apply if you're moving it or if you're building it.
Did they have a house there before they moved in?
Yeah, they had a house there, and there's a time limit within which they need to remove their existing house, 6 months.
And replace it with this one, with the moving area?
This can come in, and then 6 months after that happens.
Okay.
It's already there.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, no further questions, entertain a motion, move these.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ed, seconded by Larry, to approve the zoning permits. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Now, under other business tonight, we're going to take a look at some proposed ordinance changes. And of course, as time goes by, things in the county change, and as they change, then we need to look at the ordinances to address the changes that are occurring. So the zoning office has been looking at this for some time, and they've identified the sections of the ordinance that may need to be updated. And Aaron's also come up with some draft language for some of the possible changes. Our job tonight will be to identify the sections that we think should be changed, or could be changed. And if we agree that there should be some changes made, we'll have to also draft the language then that we want to go along with those changes. Now, we won't be taking any public comment tonight because what we're doing here tonight is identifying the changes we want to make, and we want to draft the language. So we're going to have another public hearing in July. And once we identify the ordinances that we want to change and we come up with the language, then 10 days before that July meeting, at least 10 days before that July meeting, the proposed language will be posted on the website and it will be advertised in Houston County News. So at that point, you're welcome to send written comments to the zoning administrator prior to that July public hearing. And then at the July public hearing, we'll also be taking public comment. Now, once we take public comment, we may decide not to make some changes. Or we may decide to amend some of the language that we come up with here tonight. Or we may even table some of them for later. So, are there any questions on this procedure? How are we doing? Okay, so again, tonight we're going to just identify those sections of the ordinance to where we think some updates should be made. And if we think that they do, then we need to come up with the language. And Aaron does have some language there for us, we can look at that. So Aaron, go ahead and tell us what you've been working on.
Sure. So I guess beginning with familiarizing myself with the ordinance, just by reading it and then by working with landowners and applying it, problems become apparent, which I guess lead to solutions. An additional input for these proposed changes came from a meeting with the township officials that had occurred a couple months ago, where I had highlighted some areas where I thought perhaps we might want to take a closer look, and we sort of threw those out there, batting around with the township officials that night. Since that time, I've also met with each of you in smaller groups to kind of discuss these things and get your ideas about them. Each one of these processes changes the outlook on what kind of changes would be necessary, and I would think that they would change again after time when we discuss it as a full group. I should also say that before any of that occurred, I actually spoke to the town or the county board about areas where perhaps there needs to be some modifications. So it's been a slower process than maybe it has been in the past. but I think that it's being done thoughtfully. I would propose that we would simply go through each page and look on the proposed deletions or additions and try to get somewhat of a consensus on what we would put forth as the draft language that would be posted and the public would be able to provide comments based on something, although I wouldn't think that we would be voting or in any way officially sanctioning any language tonight other than just kind of informally putting forth a consensus that what we would consider as a starting place next week.
Actually, we should come up with the language tonight, because that's the language that's going to be posted on the website. And that's the language we're going to be taking public comment from on. You're not all right?
My concern is that that would constitute an amendment of this, or beginning the process of amendment of this. And
But if we don't post what we want to change, how are people going to know what to comment?
no, I think we post it. I think we can, without actually making a motion, we can arrive at some form of consensus and post that, and then actually make a motion regarding it in July or at a future meeting.
Okay, what do people think on the commission?
Well, I think what you're trying to do is just get a draft document, something together that has a kind of an idea of what we think about these changes.
Precisely.
And put that out.
Right, this is certainly not, what we done here tonight with is not what's going to the county board. What we're doing here tonight is just, we got to come up with something that we can post on the website and publish, so people know what we're looking at and how we're going to say it. And then people can comment on it, and then at that point, next meeting is when we're actually going to take the vote to send our final recommendations to the county board. But we got to be pretty well all on board here as to what we recommend gets advertised and published for our next meeting. I would think.
Well, I think too, if we just come to a consensus, I mean, that, without making a motion, that leaves it more flexible.
Okay.
I mean, people see it as, this is a draft versus something that's been voted on.
Perhaps you could make a motion instructing staff to publicize the document as it exists at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then not send it to the county.
This is the first draft. This is the first step, and, you know, the more people, the more eyes that look at it, the more refined it will get, and the more people will have buy-in on it.
Okay, let's go through this with by section now. Let's just look at the definitions to start with.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you all turn to the first page of the packet that you have provided, the first change is within the definition of agricultural use. The language reads, for purpose of this definition, the following terms are defined as, and number one is field crops shall include but not be limited to corn, soybeans, hay, oats, rye, wheat, fruit, vegetable, foresters, or other products suitable for human or animal consumption. And I'm proposing that we delete foresters.
And the reason?
I guess the reason, first and foremost, is that foresters is almost nonsensical.
Okay.
And then the reason, secondary reason for that is that when we get further into this ordinance, we will be mentioning field crops in another section where we specifically do not want it applied to forest areas.
Okay. The next change?
The next change would be deletion of number 4 there, where it talks about temporary or permanent single-family dwellings occupied by the owners of the farm and/or persons primarily engaged in the production of field crops or the raising of livestock on the farm on which the dwelling is located. My suspicion as to why this language remains is that it was left in an error in 2014 when an interim use permit was introduced into the ordinance that allowed for a temporary farm dwelling with the same criteria. This language suggests that perhaps you would be able to put a second stick-built home, but doesn't clearly articulate that. So I think it's vague and it's redundant. especially considering the changes that occurred in 2014.
And you're addressing family dwellings later on in the ag district.
Secondary or temporary farm dwellings, we're not addressing them at this point in time, they were addressed in 2014.
Right.
And for the sake of time, I'm not going to mention number changing that results from these.
So,
We move on to page 9, the definition of bluffs. The problem that had surrounded this is that we had adopted the state definition of bluffs, which only included bluffs within shoreland. We have a lot of bluffs outside shoreland, so what I'm proposing here is a way to remedy that. So I would propose deleting the first sentence after bluff. Topographic features such as a hill or embankment having the following characteristics, and replace it with within shoreland, a topographic feature such as a hill, cliff, or embankment having all of the following characteristics. Number 1, the slope rises at least 25 feet above the ordinary high water level of the water body, and number 2, the grade of the slope from the toe of the bluff to a point 25 feet or more above the ordinary high water level averages 24% or greater. So what we're doing here is the word "and" is being added to, so we're going more restrictive than the state's definition, and then they don't use "and" or, they kind of leave it open to interpretation, I suppose, but I think that ambiguity has the potential to lead to problems. The second change here would be adding a definition for bluffs outside of shoreline, and this would be a topographic feature such as a hill, cliff, or embankment having all the following characteristics. And in here we're number 1, the total vertical rise between the toe and the top of the topographic feature is 50 feet or more, and the grade of the slope from the toe to the top of the topographic feature averages 24% or more. Additionally, in this section, we are simply moving the definition of a toe of bluff and the top of a bluff into the definition of a bluff. There used to be standalone definitions within the ordinance. I don't think a lot of people intuitively go to look up the definition of toe of a bluff. I think it's more practical to house that all within the definition of a bluff.
okay, any questions on that? Okay, so the definition is going outside the shoreline, and we're going to have some additional definitions outside of the shoreline district for a bluff. Okay.
The definition of buildable lot on page 10. I'm proposing that we delete some language from that. I guess I'll read the sentence. A lot of record or other lot, tract, or parcel legally recorded with the county recorder that meets the requirements of this ordinance. And then the rest of the sentence is what I'm proposing that we delete, and which has 150-foot frontage on an approved and maintained public road. The reason I'm proposing we delete that is that I feel that these requirements are better housed within the district section of the ordinance and not within the definition section. And I don't think that people necessarily go to the definition section of the ordinance to find the requirements in any given district. I'm proposing we add this sentence. Buildings or structures shall not be permitted on land which has a slope. And this is a change from what you had. What your packet say in excess of 24%, but I'm crossing out in excess there because our definition of bluffs includes land that's 24%. So to make those all consistent, we either have to push bluffs up to 25 or bring this down to 24. I'll be open to conversation here about which way we want to go on that.
You say a slope of less than 24%, then? Is that what you're saying? Oh, in excess.
Including, so 24% or greater.
24% or greater. So how do you want to say it?
I think buildings or structures shall not be permitted on land which has a slope of 24% or greater.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard. It includes the 24%.
yes, correct, because of the bluff language is 24%. So we need to make those so they can work in concert.
Okay, any questions on that?
Would you take out number 1 then? Follows there, number 1 says that very thing that you just said in the sentence up there.
Correct. It would number 1 would now read, area of a slope of 24% or greater.
And I had a question on that. Are them or and? The four points there. Again, it's, you know, like we did before,
Sure.
we defined whether it was or and. I suspect it's or, but I don't.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's all of those. If you add up the total area that falls into any of those four categories, that cannot be more than 10% or more of your buildable lot. It's how I always look at things. But if you need to clarify that, now would be a good time to do that.
I believe so, because I read it as or, so probably we need to clear it.
Well, it says which not more than 10% of the required lot is collectively comprised of the following. Is that covered?
That's the way that I interpreted that to read.
Do you think that covers it?
The word collective.
Yeah, collectively, I mean, that,
I think that covers it.
I didn't know. Okay.
you got that here?
Yeah, and I'm putting this in there as
Yeah, well, we think that the word collectively in there points to when you add those all up, it's more than 10%.
Sure.
I don't care.
Moving down from there, we have another requirement or another statement within the buildable lot definition that I'm proposing that we delete. And that is that non-farm dwelling shall not be located on class 1 through 3 soils as rated in the Soil Survey, Eastern County, Minnesota Soil Conservation Service, USDA 1984. And again, I think a better place to have that language concerning the restriction would be in the non-farm dwellings language within the ag district section.
One thing I'm seeing here, this access roads, that's pretty important. I wonder if that shouldn't have its own bold print, just says access roads. Because it shouldn't be just in addition to, that's kind of a big deal.
Sure.
So everything else has a bold print heading there. You can just put access roads and then put the,
So are you proposing that we define that and move it to access roads alphabetically inserted in definitions, or just keep it housed under a buildable lot, but draw more attention to it?
maybe alphabetical? Would that make sense?
So what do you want to put in the definition for access roads?
That they can't be any more than the final sum of 12%, no more than 12%.
Yeah, we're dealing with access roads, I think, later with the 33% cartway, and then either you own them or you have a legal easement.
Well, it's,
But you can't build
This
on
describes
it.
the slope. This is-
Yeah, but you can't build on a lot. This really is tied into the building lot, because you can't build on a lot if you can't get to it with access that's less than 12%.
But I think you'd probably still define it separately and have it as part of the criteria. I don't know.
well, it is a criteria. It's one of the pieces that makes up what constitutes a buildable lot. So I would recommend leaving it within the definition of buildable lot. What we could clarify to say something like driveways and access roads, or maybe just removing additions so that it, reads as it's a more significant requirement, perhaps.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at, because it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Any thoughts on adding anything to the driveways and access roads?
Well, I think you could, go ahead.
I'm always reluctant to put things in two places, but they should really be in driveways. There's an ordinance for driveways, but it should be part of buildable lots as well.
The driveways are in a separate location with regard to the driveway to the residence. This is the access road which would be used in order to bring materials up to build the house, as well as, future driveway. But this is before the house is there. This is the access to that parcel. And that's why it's defined that way.
Yeah, you're right. service a new building site.
But they're not gonna start building there until the lot is checked out and the proposed driveway is gonna have less than 12%. I mean, all that's gonna be approved before they start bringing the materials in to build a house, you know, all that's gotta be pre-approved. And it all is tied into the buildable lot,
Right.
yeah.
Should we just make it number 5?
That's
Just take
not,
off the definition.
Except that,
That's
no, the collective comprise,
So,
no.
we can't do that.
So the only other language in the ordinance that talks about driveways, it's just a section under chapter, it's included, it's included under section 29, it's the general section where all the branding things are housed. And it reads, access permit required, and access permits required before construction begins. Damage deposit required. The local unit of government having jurisdiction over the public right of way may require a damage deposit. And then here's the standard designs. Following standard designs are general standards and may be modified to meet such specific needs as determined by the jurisdiction. The access approach immediately adjacent to the public right of way shall be a flat area 20 feet wide and 20 feet long. Driving surface gradient shall not exceed 12%. The driveway width shall have a width of not less than 12 feet at the narrowest dimension, and the driveway side slopes. The driveway bank shall not exceed a 2-to-1 slope gradient. And then there's erosion control standards, which are required after you put that in. But that language I just read there, that's the gist of what's required rather than what's included in that buildable lot definition. We could reference this language within the definition of buildable lot, saying driveways must be constructed to conform with, and then this is whatever section this is.
I think that's already it.
that makes good sense.
Okay, all right.
So we'll read all driveways and access roads shall be constructed in conformity with section 0110.2919. That's the section required.
Okay, all right.
How's it gonna read?
All driveways and access roads shall be constructed in conformity with section 0110.2919.
So, what you just read to us specifies the width, the grade, as well as the elevation. So to have a construction road that leads to the building site, they have to make it flat, coming off of the local road, they have to have it at least 12 feet wide coming off, going up the driveway, it has to be less than 12%. So they have to build the driveway before they build the house. They can't have just an access to the building site.
Sure. I've always read access roads to mean essentially driveway. It's not the road they use to access the site for the building purposes.
But on the buildable lot, the access road, they may just throw down breaker rocks so they got access to get up there. Then you build the driveway after the home is built.
Are you suggesting that we have it read all driveways and remove access roads?
No. I'm saying the buildable lot has nothing to do with the driveway. The driveway comes after the lot has a house built on it, or the property has something built on it that you need the driveway to get to.
Yeah, but if they build a house and then they can't get a driveway that's less than 12%, what are we gonna do? We better have a driveway.
That's why the buildable lot has the issue,
Yeah.
12% or less.
Yeah.
When you build on it, then they still have to be able to make the driveway according to the way you read before.
So you're saying, why can't they use the proposed driveway for the access road? How big a deal is that?
Nothing, I'm just saying that if we put that verbiage in there, then they build the driveway before they build the house. They gotta build a little lot, it's got the 12% grade, but they have to have the width, they have to have the side slopes, they have to have the access to the public road built into it based on that definition.
Would that be a problem?
Well,
Well,
the contractor may not want to do that till after he's done building the house.
So, should we have should we define access road and driveway separately to avoid that? That's sort of what's happening
That's kind of
before.
what was in here
That's
before.
what it is.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
well, then I think, Dan, that brings up a good point, though. You know, they got everything built, and now it's, wow, we don't have room for the 20 by 20, and we don't, you know, we're gonna be a little greater than 12%, and, I mean, we should know that stuff up front. I mean, it's, you can write. But I can see your point, they just want to put breaker rock in there.
Yeah, but why would you build two roads?
Oh, that's a good point.
No, I'm saying, why would you build the driveway and then wreck it while you're bringing up the building materials and whatnot? Rather, make a roadway that you can get, we reference the driveway regulation with this.
Right.
So they know what the driveway has to be before it's gonna receive its approval. But they don't have to build the driveway during the construction of the project. They finish with the driveway.
I would say that you're gonna build a driveway that's gonna meet the grade specifications of 12%.
Typically, what I found in the past, you are building on a breaker rock drive, so you got access with your trucks and materials and whatnot. Then after you're done, you come in and put the rest of the base and bring it out to the full width and complete the driveway at that point in time. You don't complete it, then have all your equipment going up and down the driveway and ruin it, so you gotta start over.
True, but you're still gonna be at the grade that you
Oh,
need.
I'm not arguing the grade.
Right.
I'm just saying they should not have to have a complete driveway until they're done with the buildable lot meets the criteria of the grade. Then you reference the driveway regulations in order to notify that this is what the final driveway has to be like. You don't have to have it when you're building the project, but you have to have it when you're complete.
What component of the standards do you think is the problem? Is it the approach, 20 feet wide, lot area 20 feet wide and 20 feet long?
No,
The gradient?
none of that is a problem as far as the driveway requirement,
But in terms of the access.
but I don't think it's an access requirement.
But you know, if this is being built on a hillside, we don't want bulldozers going up a whole other place, digging a hole under the road. There's erosion control things that gotta be in place.
The bulldozer, everything else has to use that 12% grade and put in, make the driveway on that 12% grade. I'm just saying that a buildable lot does not require a completed driveway. You need 12% access. When you're done building, then you can make your completed driveway.
Well, maybe we want to put this, we would call it a roughed-in driveway. They're gonna, I mean, there's gonna be rust, there's gonna be whatever. But it needs to eventually get to that.
Perhaps we can go back to the first thing I suggested, which was just removing the in addition language, sticking with the way that it was written, where we're only talking about the slope of the access road and letting the other requirements only kick in for a completed driveway.
Maybe we should mention the driveway requirements in the buildable lot, because you can't have a buildable lot if it's not accessed correctly either. So that maybe should be right after the first sentence, just put all finished driveways must conform to the statute, and then go to that next section.
All right.
Just a
He's talking about the finish of the road. That's different. He's not to have the same pitch of the road. He's trying to have the same width of the road.
Okay, so now here's how it'll read. In addition to deleted, so it simply says, all access related service, new building site or dwelling shall be constructed with a final slope of less than 12%. And then here's a new sentence, all finished driveway shall be constructed in conformity with the section that talks about the standards for driveway.
Very good.
Yep.
I think that covers it. Thank you.
On the back slide, but maybe we want to put something in there. Each lot must be able to support or conform to be a buildable lot. They have to have the ability to build a driveway.
I mean, that's what we're going for with that last sentence we just
All right,
had.
let's go with it.
It's tough to tell sometimes into the future, are they going to be able to do it or not, but usually those plans are run through their contractor, and the
Yeah.
contractor says yes.
Sure.
Okay, we are now on page 13, and we're looking at the definition of dwelling. Looking at adding a sentence at the end of that definition that says, to be considered a dwelling, a building must have been residentially occupied for 8 of the last 10 years. And then I am proposing to add, since I printed this off for you, for buildings 10 years or older to be considered a dwelling. A building must have been residentially occupied for 8 of the last 10 years. And this is to prevent arguments over what constitutes a dwelling and what does not. And that later on in the Ag District section, there are some implications if you have an existing dwelling. So potentially folks we don't want folks to be able to say that's foundation on the field that constitutes a dwelling. This makes clear that you have to have, somebody has to have been living in it for it to be a dwelling.
So what do you have after, to be considered a dwelling, a building must have been residentially occupied for 8 of the last 10 years?
Period, but at the beginning of that sentence, I added, for buildings 10 years old or greater, or older.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah. So, if there's a building out there that's 10 years old or older, we consider it a dwelling under your definition, it has to be occupied for at least 8 of the last 10 years.
Right.
Okay.
We're doing something very similar later on there.
All right, so you're adding another sentence in.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get into this more when we get into the Ag District and the property splits, but there's a reason why we need it here now on definitions.
Page 26, these two deletions, this is simply the language that was deleted and moved into the definition of block, the total block, without any changes. So they exactly the same.
Okay, is that in the definition section?
That is the unit
Okay.
definition section.
Okay, we have consensus on the definitions then? Can we move forward in the next section?
I agree.
Okay. Now we're going to what section?
The next section would be the conditional use permit section.
Okay.
On page 38 of your packet, and we were looking at the compliance section. The language, as it reads now, it says any use permitted under the terms of any conditional use permit shall be established and conducted in conformity to the terms of such permit and of any conditions designated in connection therewith. Failure to comply with the terms of the permit shall cause automatic termination of the permit, and the use may not be continued or restarted without county board approval. I'm proposing that we delete that last sentence and replace it with, if the permit holder does not abide by the conditions set forth in the permit, the county has the right to hold a hearing to investigate, set additional conditions, and/or revoke the permit in conformance with the procedures set forth in section 10 of section 10, violations, penalties, and enforcement. That's section 10 of this ordinance. This language is consistent with the language in, very consistent with the slight modification with the language that was introduced in 2014 in the interim use permit section. And it's also consistent with the language in section in the mineral extraction section.
See, section 10 section 10 is devoted solely to violations, penalties, and enforcement. So we're tying the conditional use permits and the interim permits to section 10, which clearly outlines a due process that you must go through if you're in violation, that we go through if you're in violation. And it outlines everything the county can do to you, and, if there's violations. But it's a roadmap, exactly what you follow. The whole section's there in section 10. And conditional use permits and interim permits are official county controls. So they would come under the jurisdiction of section 10.
I think it's a situation where we either have to change what it says in section 10 to be compatible with the language that I'm proposing to delete here, or change this language to be compatible with section 10 and really other parts of the ordinance where they reference compliance.
Any questions?
This is where we just leave the, and say, okay, we don't need this, can we do section 10 first?
Yeah.
Well, we're headed there anyway, but, well, just automatically say, okay, we don't need this.
You mean, what are the, what is the due process on that then?
We're headed to section 10.
Section 10 is in the zoning book. We don't have everything reprinted here, but it's in your zoning book. What's that? But there's just a few changes they're making in 10. It's not much, just a couple words, I think. But the whole section 10 is in the book there. I look at it there, Rick.
I can quickly tell you, it's a suspected ordinance violation. When an ordinance violation is either discovered by or brought to the attention of the zoning administrator shall investigate the situation, document the nature and extent of the violation of the official control. Sub 3, notification of suspected violation. The zoning administrator shall notify the suspected party of the requirements of this ordinance and all other official controls and the nature and extent of the suspected violation of these controls. And then stop work order, when a stop work order is instituted by the zoning administrator for any reason whatsoever, the work shall not again be resumed until the reason for the work stoppage has been completely removed. In the event of a violation of this ordinance, the county board or any member thereof, in addition to other remedies, may institute appropriate actions or proceedings to prevent, restrain, correct, or abate such violations. So that's really what we're saying, is that the action likely would be a hearing to review the alleged violation, and the board at that point could take an appropriate action, whatever action they feel is appropriate.
Any other questions?
So which one are we on? What are we on now? Still this,
Well, you're looking at the compliance paragraph for conditional use permits and interim permits.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is tie the compliance into section 10, which clearly outlines what you're faced with if you're in violation.
yes. This is probably just semantics. I think it's unusual. I would cross out does not abide by. That seems strange for me. And put violates. If the permit holder violates the conditions set forth in the permit, and I don't have a serious problem with it, but does not abide by seems, I don't know. I had to look up abide.
I have no thoughts. I am fine with that.
It's in both of the permits.
What is the rest of that?
Just take out the four words, "do not abide by," and put it violates.
Okay.
But the conditions are like a directive. They're not, well, they are official county control. Yeah, they are. So I suppose you could use the term violate then.
Well, and down further, violations, penalties, and blah, blah.
Yeah.
comments on this language?
Okay, in section 10, you made some changes?
Well, the next section, I think, is section 7, so this is the interim.
So the change is gonna be violates.
That's what I'm going with now. I'm looking for direction from you all.
Also take off the last sentence.
The only change is striking, well, percentage violence. Strike failure of violence terms because I that information.
That's being removed, that's not proposing to remove that, yes. Moving on to interim use permits, it's the exact same language and the exact same part of that section, is the compliance section for an interim use permit.
Any questions on that? So the language for the interims and the conditional permits will be exactly the same in the compliance section.
Okay, moving on to section 10, violations, penalties, and enforcement. I'll read the sentences. Any person, firm, or corporation and or both landowners and contractors who shall violate any of the provisions hereof, or who shall fail to comply with any of the provisions hereof, or who shall make any false statement in any document required to be submitted under the provisions hereof, shall be guilty of, and I'm proposing that we remove guilty of and insert subject to misdemeanor and then insert punishment. We used to read guilty of and misdemeanor, and now we'll read subject to misdemeanor punishment. And we had a conversation with Sam about whether we can declare someone guilty within the ordinance. I don't think that we can do that.
I think only judges can do that. So we can say we're going to charge them, but the judge is up to them guilty, not us.
Well, then isn't the punishment up to the judge as well?
For a misdemeanor, it is, but we have plenty of other things that we can do. Like
We're saying subject to misdemeanor punishment, so we're assuming they're going to be punished.
Well, they're subject to it, so they could be punished. They're not necessarily punished.
Okay, all right.
The misdemeanor, you're subject to 90 days in jail or $1,000 fine.
What's that, Sam?
There's a misdemeanor, you're subject to a 90 days in jail or $1,000 fine.
90 days in jail or $1,000 fine. Okay. Any other questions on section 10? Okay, we got consensus so far? All right, move forward. Now we're going to permitted uses.
Permitted uses in that district, so here we're talking about farm dwellings. Several changes here. These are, we all talked about this in small groups, but these changes are designed to remedy the situation we're having with the splits in the ag district and the potential caseload of folks who would be in ownership of a non-conforming lot. And we have to deal with that in the same way we dealt with it last month, where people coming after the fact. CUPs, this is a proposal that would make some of those situations permitted uses. So under single-family dwellings. Single-family dwellings located on 40 or more contiguous acres subject to one dwelling per quarter section, and having a legally recordable perpetual access at least 33 feet wide from an existing public roadway on sites considered buildable lots as defined by this ordinance. An erosion control plan as set forth by section 24 shall be submitted with all applications for new single-family dwellings. I don't know where that's on here.
It is not.
But that's a more recent addition. So those are proposed additions, and I'm proposing to delete unless it meets the requirements of an ag use residential dwelling as defined by this ordinance. And that ties back to that definition of ag dwelling in we deleted earlier on. So what this would do, as the ordinance reads, there may or may not have been a requirement for 150 feet of road frontage for a farm dwelling. As I understand it practically, that has not been the way it's been enforced for the last several decades, that if you had 40 more acres, you were building without a requirement of any road frontage. But you did have to have a way to access your site, so we're simply codifying that at this point, saying that you don't need the road frontage, but you have to have a legal access to your site. This will allow a lot more building sites in the county than if we went the other direction and made it 150 feet of road frontage. You should make this decision being mindful that there is a Minnesota statute by which a landowner can attempt to compel a township to grant a cartway. Looking at that, it looks like if they already have an access, then they would not be successful in that based on some case law. But it's a potential risk, I suppose, if you have someone who's trying to meet this requirement and does not have an easement. They would always be able to look at that as a possible way to come into conformity with what would be required to be granted a by permit use here, or permitted use.
Question.
Yeah.
If I own 40 acres or more that fronts a public roadway, why would I have to have a legally recorded perpetual access 33 feet wide? If my property is landlocked, I would have to have a perpetual easement, but if I own the property, would I still have to then record a 33-foot easement someplace on that property from the roadway?
Well, I'm trying to use the word access there to mean both ownership and an easement.
Right, but legally recorded access, if I own the land, how do we differentiate?
Well, I guess you bring up a good point, because I guess that's not necessarily perpetual. If you own it, you could always, but I guess if you sell the land, you could sell it as an easement as well. The use of the word access there is intended to mean both I own the easement across our land and I own the land, because if I own the land right up to the road, I can access it. It's legally recorded. So I'm trying to catch both of those situations with that word.
It doesn't ring for me as far as the way it comes out. It reads you have to then have a legally recorded 33-foot access.
Right, so if you own 33 feet of road frontage, I would say that you meet that requirement. And if you have an easement 33 feet wide, I would also say that you meet that requirement.
Do you want the word own something there, Bob?
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what I want to put in there, it just doesn't ring for me.
I hear what you're saying now. So he could either own the 33 feet or have a legally recorded easement.
Right.
So really, at this point though, if someone had 40 acres that was landlocked, but he had an easement, he could still build out there, provided that he wasn't in the quarter and he met the slope requirements and everything else. This actually is a little bit more maybe restrictive, because he might have an easement that's not 33 feet wide to that property.
Well,
Which
yes.
I don't have a problem with, but I'm just pointing that out.
Well, the 33 feet comes from the state statute.
Yes, yes, that's why it's good that we have it. Yeah.
I should also say, I guess this is not exactly off the state, I'll come back around to it, is that the language that allows someone to compel a township for an easement doesn't require a building site. All they have to do is own the land. So right now, there's probably a lot of parcels that are landlocked. There's no dwelling, there's no structure. They can still go ahead, they can move forward and try to pursue that avenue right now without having a house. There's no house requirement in that language.
Right, but they wouldn't get approval for the house until they have their legally recorded access, yeah.
Right, so if they had an access of less than 33 feet,
We couldn't approve it.
yes.
If we got this.
Right, but that's when I'm worried, if someone were in that situation, that's when they would use that mechanism to get the easement they would need to satisfy the requirements of the ordinance.
Well, it's state law.
Yeah. So they can reserve of this, or is providing a bit of an incentive perhaps, but I don't anticipate it being a large phenomenon. I think in the most part, this will free up more building sites that are back, will have things existing.
Can you do it on the basis that after the quarter section, you put note that landlocked property must have perpetual access at least 33 feet wide?
Well, it's all property, whether it's landlocked or not. Yeah. So, no, if he doesn't have access, he can't get a building permit, period. So he's got to get it, so before he can get a building permit. You have questions? Okay,
Do we want to have something in there like, unless you have road frontage or have a,
Maybe we want to get it, because they're the second one who's saying, just
Yeah.
trying to think of what that would be.
if you have, road frontage or have a legally recorded blah, blah, blah.
So having,
well, you could just have legally recorded, either owned or have legally recorded perpetual access at least 33 feet wide from an existing public roadway or 150 feet of frontage, road frontage on that road.
150.
150 out.
if you own it, we would only require 33 feet too. We wouldn't require a lesser width if you had a lease.
Okay.
Also, we can,
Okay, then just have legally recorded perpetual easement or 33 feet wide or have access through the,
Like I say, you own frontage on a road or have the.
have 33 feet of frontage, you either own 33 feet of frontage on the road or you have a legally recorded easement.
Yep.
all right, so how do we like this here? Single-family dwellings located on 40 or more contiguous acres, subject to one dwelling per quarter section, and having ownership of 33 feet of road front of at least 33 feet of road frontage on a public roadway, or if it can be recordable.
I'm okay.
Okay, the reference to the erosion control plan. Adding that's not on your handouts, but the sentence is, the erosion control plan as set forth by section 24 shall be submitted with all applications for new single-family dwellings. The reason for this is we specifically call that out for non-farm dwellings, and I think when people read through that, they think it's been called out here, and it hasn't been called out in farm dwellings, well, it still applies, but it must not apply, because why are they calling out in one and not in the other? So now we're just making it so we reference it as well.
Okay.
All right, the addition of number 5 here.
Now, this is under permitted uses. What we're continuing with here.
Right, under permitted uses, farm dwellings of 40 acres, that at one time were in the 40 acres only. So single-family dwellings that were built on 40 or more contiguous acres, but are now located at less than 40 acres due to a property split. So that's the title, it's number 5, it's a long title, we'll review at the beginning of the language. Single-family dwellings that were built on 40 or more contiguous acres, but are now located on less than 40 acres due to a property split can continue as a permitted use if they meet the following criteria. A, the dwelling was in existence at least 10 years prior to the date of the property split, or if the dwelling is less than 10 years old, it must have replaced the dwelling that was in existence at least 10 years prior to the property split that was inhabited as a permanent residence in 8 of the last 10 years prior to the time of the new dwelling being built, or prior to the time that the new dwelling was built. It's important here to recognize that the passage of 10 years doesn't necessarily make the dwelling permitted. If the dwelling is built in 2000 and the split occurs in 2003, the dwelling in 2010 does not become permitted because the split didn't occur 10 years after. It's only 3 years, so in a situation like that, where the split occurs 3 years after the dwelling is built, this would never kick in. That situation, they would be looking at coming in for a cut. The reason why it's 10 years is that we don't want people trying to skirt the requirements of the ordinance by building homes as farm dwellings, and then splitting off and selling as non-farm dwellings. And the 10-year requirement is a disincentive to do that. It's a long enough period where it's much more restricted, it's much more of a hardship to do that than it would be to build it as a non-farm dwelling in the first place through the correct channels. If the dwelling was inhabited in any of the last 10 years. So this is intended to prevent arguments over what constitutes a dwelling or not. The chimney and the half foundation wall can't be a dwelling unless you've been living in the last 10 years. C, the dwelling site meets all legal lot area and lot width and depth standards. D, the dwelling and all accessory buildings meet all applicable setback standards. And E, the dwelling site has a legally recorded perpetual access at least 33 feet wide from an existing public roadway. And I was mentioning we're going to change that language in here when the change is made about.
Any questions on that? So you understand what we're doing here?
I understand what we're doing,
Okay?
but explain to me why we have B when it says similarly, same thing in A.
Well, that redundant language in A only applies to a dwelling that's a situation where there has been a dwelling for a period of time, it's raised and a new structure is built on the same site, and then 3 years later, the parcel's split. We're simply saying that the dwelling that you tore down, it must have been an occupied residence. It couldn't have been, you couldn't have built your new house on a foundation and then make the argument that this is a dwelling and I'm permitting it as a permitted use rather than going through the code process. It's really to prevent, it's to limit this language to existing houses is what we're trying to do.
What we're trying to guard against is someone buying 40 acres, building a house, and then selling off 37 acres, and it's out in an ag district, and it's on less than 40 acres. I mean, we're trying to target this to existing building sites, farm sites and so forth that are now getting caught up in property splits. And so if you meet these criteria, if you've been on 40 acres before and now you're on less than 40 acres because of the split, you can continue as a permitted use as long as you meet these requirements, these criteria. Now that won't, there's been some splits out there that won't meet this, and so we're gonna have to deal with those another way. And I think this will take care of a large number of them. The rest of them, we can't give building permits until they're not conforming at this point, and they won't get building permits, or they can't do until they do it.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
You have a property with a house on it, somebody bought 40 acres, built a nice house, built a nice garage, a little shop in the back.
What's the sequence of several?
I own 40 acres of land.
Okay,
It's in a quarter section.
okay.
It is a quarter section. I come in, I get a permit, I build a house with a nice triple garage, I build a shed in the back. I'm permitted.
Right.
I decide I don't like living in the country, I want to move to town a year and a half later. I sell 5 acres to so-and-so, and I sell the other 35 acres to the farmer I bought the land from in the first place. There's nothing that says I can't do that. It's on 5 acres.
No, but if it was just 3 years old, that would not, that house
You
there.
can't tell me I can't sell the land.
No, I can't. You go ahead and do it. You go ahead and sell it. But from that point forward, that property, that house is a non-conforming property.
So here's my question.
Okay?
How do we protect the person that's buying the 3-acre house site with the house on it? Because they're buying the property. How do you inform them that they are not a non-conforming use and they can't change their septic, they can't build on, they can't do anything?
Okay, one of the things we propose to do, if this passes, if this gets adopted, is that we would have a checklist that will go to every single realtor in the county and to every lawyer in the county, probably to every bank in the county. Here is the zoning checklist. If you're involved in property splits, make sure the property complies with this checklist, or this property will be non-conforming and there will not be any building permits issued going forward until corrected. We just have to inform the people that are involved in these splits of what the county zoning ordinance is.
The problem really is that I talked with the Petersons, right, so we can speak with them about this. Oftentimes, the county is not involved in any way until the deal is already done. So at that point, all we can really do, our best case scenario is inform them of the situation they found themselves in. But nobody, they don't come to the county to record the document until it's signed document, it's a done deal, and at that point in time, it may be too late for them to reconfigure the lot line so that they're dealing with a conforming situation rather than a non-conforming. So that's an area that we need to look at in the future, but thus far I have not been able to come up with any grand solutions other than, as Dan said, education efforts to try to get folks to voluntarily.
And that's really should be the county's responsibility. We really need to get the word out to the decision makers, the people that are doing the deals, what the county ordinance are. They should be checking, but if they're not, we need to make an effort to really get the word out to them.
Well, I share Bob's concern. I mean, I work with, larger organizations, and it's hard to get the word out, especially having a new employee come in, he goes through 5 days of orientation, and someplace in there, he said, you gotta do this. What are the chances, I mean, the people first will do it, but, people forget that's a unique situation. Where are they gonna check this every time they sell a house? And like I said, new people come in and they go through orientation, they're trained, and this is one item of 3 days of training. They're gonna remember it, they're gonna do it, and how often will that apply? You check it 50 times and it never applies, you get kind of like,
Well, I will tell you this, I talked to some of, I would say that the land use transition in Eastern County are probably doing 90% of this. And two things that became apparent. One is that we can have this checklist, but there are certain requirements that are.
Can everybody hear Sam? Do you want to pick the microphone or?
There are certain requirements that the state requires for documents to be recorded by Fed Hall. Our checklist isn't one of them. And so it's interesting, like in Winona County, they have, I think Winona County, you can correct me, you and I have talked about this here, right? So Winona County has a checklist like septic, all right? And it can't be recorded without that. And they've had some success with that. But then I know there's other counties that the recorder says, no, if you come in with this document meets the state requirement, I have to do it, even if you're checklist, because that's a county thing. But the other thing is, if you look at this, if you look at the, our comprehensive plan or our zoning ordinance, the idea is we're trying to, one of the goals is, overarching goals is to stop disputes. And so it's not our responsibility, but it's a good idea to do this. When I talk to the people, the attorneys who are doing this land, especially the ones who are doing the title insurance, there's already a clause in there that says, much like in our parks, what we do, that, you are responsible for all state, local ordinances and stuff. But when I talked to them, they thought that they would attach it to the title documents, and that they thought that they were encouraged by it, and they thought that, if many of us bought a house, they go through like a checklist with you, this would be just added to that, all the papers that they go through, it's just a normal process. And is it gonna be perfect? No, but it's gonna be 100% better than what we have now. And, it's one of those things that you probably heard me say in the past, is that you can't let, perfect become the enemy of good. And so this does give us a mechanism that we don't have in the past, or whatever right now. And because that is something that, when I talk to attorneys about this, we're doing this, they all can tell you stories about ending up with just what Bob's talking about. In that, how do we do this? And especially if it's been 6, 7 years down the road that you want to change the septic, now the statute of limitations is gone on an action against this land deal. And so they're trying to say fraud theories, which start when the discrepancy is found out. And so, but talking to Aaron, talking to Dan, this is probably the best option that we have at this point. And again, if we can get it out there again to the, from my viewpoint, the attorneys that are doing, especially when doing the title opinions and stuff, we get that to it, doing a lot of closings, we can probably get, 85–90% of these closings that we see in Houston County taken care of. And we certainly can reach out to some of the attorneys that I know that do it in lacrosse. They're not doing so much residential stuff over here. And off the top of that, Murphy's, Skip Weir, that's probably, that's most straight shot probably some. That's probably most of your closings that we've done. They're probably somewhat more large.
What you're saying is buyer beware.
It is.
And for something that wasn't caught by this new addition here, they would always have the option of coming in and seeking a conditional use permit in the same way that we had applications last month. So I guess it's not intended to be able to fix every single possible scenario, but I think it will fix a lot of them.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think a lot of the realtors, would definitely want to do it. If they have a checklist, they'll want to follow it. And also, but it's not only the realtors, it's the lawyers and the bankers. So you've got 3 different groups here that are going to be looking at this, So, any other questions on that?
No?
E.
Only similarly to what we had talked about on the other.
Right, so I've already tweaked that to be the same way that you can change the law. So it says you can go on such a portion of these 32 feet of frontage on existing roadway or shell. Now it's illegal to require potential access to this 30.
This will be posted on the website, and if the realtors, the lawyers have suggestions, certainly the planning commission is going to be open to more suggestions on this as we go forward. If you have, I'll just say this, once it gets posted, if the realtors, the lawyers have suggestions to change this, you want to write them up, the planning commission certainly would consider that, So, moving forward.
Okay, the next section we'll be looking at here are the non-farm loans, the same section, ag section. Here, there was some different feedback from various members meetings regarding the frontage requirement, keeping it at 33 or keeping it at 150 feet. That will have to be kind of hashed out here tonight. Anyway, number C, letter C, item C, non-crop dwelling unit shall not be declared on land which is of soil classifications class 1 to 3 soil limited soil survey using county private USDA. And then I propose an addition, except in cases where the land is not being used for the production of wood crops or enrolled in government program whereby compensation is received in exchange for the removal of an area for production for a period of 10 years or more. And this is intended to allow folks to build on pasture land or in forested areas. What I've seen in my short time here is people looking at sites and realize they have to go further up the road or on a steeper slope in order to get on some soils that are a higher, a lesser quality classification, because part of that classification looks at slopes. So this would allow folks to build in areas that haven't been crop for 10 years.
See, in an ag district, we're trying to keep the houses off of class 1 through 3 zones. But if there are those situations out there where there's a building site and there haven't been any crops there for 10 years, or it hasn't been enrolled in a government program, maybe we should allow them to go ahead, because obviously that land is not being used as ag land, provided that it meets, it's the only house in the quarter, it meets the elevations, it meets all the other requirements. But if there's been no cropping or no government programs there for 10 years, maybe we should allow them to build on that land if it meets all the other requirements.
Well, the other thing that can occur is you can have just a little tiny like an acre in between some trees. You're not going to farm it, it'd be a great place to build a house, and this would solve that problem. Makes good sense.
Any other questions or comments on that? Item D, I'm proposing the addition of a sentence at the beginning of this paragraph. Non-farm dwelling units shall only be permitted on sites considered buildable lots as defined by this ordinance, and as it was written before. That's just reminding folks to go and look at that definition. It's a cue to go to the definitions section of the ordinance. Item E. Non-farm dwelling units shall be required to be located on lots having, and right now, I guess where the last left off is legally recorded perpetual access at least 32 feet wide from an existing public roadway. This is going to take some thinking and consideration. I think that either way has merit to it. I think it's a judgment call. It's in terms of a recommendation to the county board, the planning commission is going to have to make. But as it currently reads right now, it's 150 feet of, it must own 150 feet of road access or road frontage. Do we want to change that? Do we want to reduce that? Some of you said, what was the rationale for making a requirement for a farm and non-farm? That's a good question, but then I guess there are some rationales, and it's just another layer of control, because you can always pursue a variance to reduce that down. That said, if you're looking at getting a non-farm dwelling permitted through a cub, you're already going through a cub. We'd be requiring them to go through another hearing at that point in time. I don't have strong feelings or a strong recommendation for either way.
So what does the planning commission think? The history of the 150-foot frontage is that most houses would be 50 feet wide, and that you have a 50-foot setback on each side of the house. So that's 150 feet. So we required a minimum of 150 feet of frontage. It also kept the new homes up near the highway. And I don't know if that's something the townships are interested in or not. I know they don't want them too close because they throw snowplows go by and throw rocks up on them and so forth. I mean, there's a setback anyway from the highway with the house, but we've always had the 150-foot setback. No.
If you look at the number of building sites as a finite number, changing this will affect the number of sites that are considered buildable. If we change from 150 feet road frontage, which is 33 feet of easement, a lot more sites here will be considered buildable.
Are there any minimum width standards for the lot?
Yeah, the lot needs to be a minimum of 1 acre, and then there's setbacks from every boundary and off public roadways.
Or is there a width standard?
It needs to be
Long
1
as
acre.
an
So
acre?
if
It's an acre, but the building's got to be 50 feet off.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
the setback.
Pardon?
You need the setback.
Yeah, I understand that, but,
I mean, you can meet your setbacks, and you have that 1 acre, you can configure it in any way that you would like.
Any comments, questions on that, thoughts on that?
I guess from my perspective, the 33 feet that we use for the other properties, why would we treat these people any different? If they own a lot that borders the town road, they have more than 33 feet. If their lot is on the corner and it's only got 33 feet of access to the town road and runs down the line, then they got to go through the process of having a public hearing and whatnot in order to get the variance. Why do we treat them any different? I mean, if 33 feet is good enough for the ag, why should it be any different for the non?
I think we could go with the 33 feet, we could post it, and let's wait to hear from the townships. If the townships have an objection to this for some reason that we're not considering, we can go back and change it, but maybe at this point, we could go with the 33 feet, leave it this way, and wait to see if the townships, what the townships have to say about it.
I'd like to hear too, from the public comment section, if you see what people are saying. Granted, we can put the 33 feet in now, but that doesn't mean that's
Yeah, that's right.
in stone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Still within the ag district section, in the interim uses, the non-commercial family cabins, striking this entire category of structures. The problem with these is that the way that they're currently defined, these very little to distinguish them from a dwelling, other than the amount of time that they're occupied. A non-commercial family cabin dwelling, exactly the same, except that you can't permanently reside in a non-commercial family cabin, and you can permanently reside in a dwelling. That's a hard metric by which to regulate them. Another problem with these is that they're issued under an interim use permit, so they have an end date, although they can be elaborately built. They can have basements, they can be 2 stories, and have an outbuilding, and yet they can't be transferred, so you can't sell them, you can't will them to your heirs. A new permit would be needed anytime that the property changes hands. If people are investing significant sums of money in these types of buildings, you envision that becoming problematic in the future. If for any reason someone wasn't able to successfully obtain a new permits when a property transfer occurs.
So you basically call a nice cabin a house, is how you come up.
We have another way of permitting cabins, but there's restrictions on them, so that they're clearly different than a dwelling. Yeah, right now, if you want to have a seasonal building that has all the amenities afforded you in your house, it's a dwelling, and there's no requirement to occupy your dwelling while you're around. But it's still, that's, I guess, another thing that I should add, like you brought that up, is that is there different dwellings you have, non-commercial family cabin, and a dwelling in the same border. And they're so similar in almost every way, we're in a way undercutting the border requirement.
So we had a learn bell squad. Yeah. We had an applicant that wanted to build a house, but didn't quite meet all the county requirements on the property. He said, well, I'll just call it a non-commercial family cabin, because I'm only going to be there 11 months out of the year. And it was going to be 2-story, basement, garage. Ooh, there's already a house in that corner. I mean, it started to get unwieldy for us to try it for Aaron. We tried to administer it and stay, in compliance with our ordinances. It's a loophole that we probably need to close. There's reasons that we put it in originally, but it's too hard to administer.
That brings up the question, that one resident for court, is that state?
That's kind of, and the ag district.
They're considered changing that.
Not so much.
I'm not advocating that. I just wondered where it was,
Yeah, I think Gilmore County, there's 2 houses in the border of Gilmore County, there's 1 house per 40 acres, so it's up there, the county by county.
okay.
Okay, at this point, I guess we have consensus, huh? Okay.
All right. Okay, we are in section 27, minimum stretch. First paragraph of that. Proposing to add language, add the following language. The purpose of this section is to, and here's the new language, ensure extraction of minerals is done in accordance with the Houston County Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And then leave the existing language following that. Really that's because when I read this right now, it seems like the stated purpose is missing the thesis of this should be that we're doing in accordance with the combat, not that we're simply trying to minimize conflicts between neighbors. There's a lot more to that. Let's change with that. The combat changes. Its sense of meaning will change. Questions or comments on that?
Good to me.
Can I get a copy of the Houston County Comprehensive Land Use Plan?
Yeah, and I can provide those. It's also on the website.
It's on the website.
Yep. Below the definition section, proposing to introduce another section into the subsection into this section for non-conforming minds. It would read non-conforming minds from the date of the adoption of this ordinance. Legal non-conforming status will not be recognized on mine sites exceeding the following area thresholds: sites excavating or mining gravel, stone, or other non-metallic minerals on 40 acres or more; sites excavating or mining sand on 20 acres or more. As we begin the process of reviewing sites that potentially may be legal non-conforming mines, this would simply set a ceiling upon which we would recognize that we don't believe that we have any sites where the actual footprint exceeds this right now. These acreage limits are also reflect the state's limit or the state's threshold for maturity AWs, meaning the state has found that this at these acreages that becomes more need for the use changes, or the use becomes more intense or more has more of a potential to affect health, safety, and welfare of citizens. This would not necessarily mean that all legal non-conforming settlements would be permitted at 20 acres. There's developing a criteria whereby we would look at their size of 67 and maybe their average growth, maybe some other metric, and come up with what we would recognize as not constituting expansion for legal non-conformance are not allowed to expand. We do expansion in terms of intensity in that actual area. But this would set a ceiling upon which they could expand to in some scenarios.
Yeah, questions? I was wondering about what on 40 acres or more, does that mean that they have the mine permitted to go to that extent versus what they have open at a time? I'm trying to think understand what the 40, their permit is. They can go through 40 acres, whatever the unit is that they have open at a time.
No, you look at what's been like.
The word of Kiana is excavated.
Cumulative.
So if it's overburden stockpiling, it's really kind of disturbed, would be the guidance here. It would essentially be the same way in which the state looks at requirements for DAWs.
Okay, all right.
Well, this is not, that's probably under permit.
Yeah.
See, they can have these 40 acres disturbed.
Disturbed. And you can't have 40, you gotta be under. Right now,
Yeah, you had 39 acres
39.
disturbed.
Sure, or excavated, so I guess that means.
Yeah, whether it's overburdened or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of what I'm doing here is recycling the state language, so. If they're phrasing things a certain way, trying to be similar to that. Just provide some consistency to industry and to allow the industry for lots of regulations to work well in practice.
All the existing non-conforming lines that are less than 40 acres are accepted.
Legal non.
This doesn't mean that all non-conforming lines are
Existing
existing, yeah, correct. You still go, you're still going to go through a process of evaluating sites that potentially could be non-conforming lines. I would say that we surely have some sites that could meet that criteria, but we would not be recognizing them in excess of this acreage. We surely have some sites that are not going to meet that criteria, so we're going to have to go through that process, which is to set a maximum ceiling for what we would recognize.
on existing.
Existing, yeah. You
New
can't
ones gotta have a different process. This is-
New ones need permits, new one needs
This is on
cuffs.
the existing ones only.
Yeah.
Existing ones without cuffs.
Right, and something that's not conforming, they can come up to what the county would recognize as their non-conforming allowance, so to speak. And at that point in time, they would be able to pursue a permit to continue on, but we would have to go through the processes, spelled out in here to do that.
Does not mean that somebody that has land can open up a sand mine as long as it's under 20 acres. They have a different process.
Any new mine needs a conditional use permit.
Yeah, that's all I want to talk about.
But we'll get into that when we get into conditional use permits also.
Anything else on the non-conforming?
Now, again, we're overlooking something there, and we may hear about it, but we publish. So,
Okay, in operational performance standards, I don't have a number here. Maybe we just go, if you want, well, I guess I'll let you, try to finish with your guidance. This is suggested, maybe a good idea, limiting the number, limiting the amount of overburden that can be moved to access a mineral. So sites shall require the disturbance of no more than, and then fill in a number, cubic yards of overburden. The purpose of this would be that if someday the economic conditions were so that it would be economically feasible to move significantly more overburden than current economic conditions allow, we would want to see the removal of entire hills to access a mineral below that. This would cap the amount of non-mineral, or I think it would cap the amount of disturbed area to access.
I have no idea how you come up with a number though for cubic yards of overburden. And who would monitor that, and who would, how would you do that?
I think it would be the proposal, in that proposal I've seen thus far to come in, they estimate the overburden amount, or it's going to stop how they
So we're
estimate.
not taking from the county.
I just have a solution for you.
That's one. You write it out, send it to there.
I think it's common that would be in their business analysis they're doing, they're going to be obviously going to be doing that kind of exercise. It's been provided them to the permitting society, that type of information has been provided in the applications.
Right, it's been provided, but we didn't pass judgment on it.
Correct. So this may be a situation where we might just leave it in there and see what they say.
I don't know that, what do you mean to give it in?
From now, let's put it in there in the draft language and see what kind of comments we get from the public, from the industry.
Well, you said you got that on a couple, what did they had on it? I mean, some kind of starting point, you don't have to know it now, say, I've gotten these three of them, and they included that, and they said,
Well, they
this
look
much.
at, they look at an excavation site, 15 acres, they'll have an estimate of how much overburden is, we'll look at the geology of the area, and they'll say, we'll be moving this much material, it's that time of year, and then we're gonna mine this much material.
Yeah, and you said you got a couple of them at least that included that.
Oh, yes, yes.
And they were going down.
Definitely a starting point, and then the average and,
Well, they were only going down 20 or 30 feet.
Yeah.
well, but it's a starting point.
It could be, I guess, I don't know what's reasonable and what's not.
I don't have any idea, but at least you got something to back up why you put that in there. And then, like I say, somebody with more knowledge can certainly weigh in on it.
Part of it would be economics. I mean, that's what you're getting at. But if it's something that really valuable, if they go really deep for it, is that what you're talking about?
Right, I think somebody brought up the Appalachian region analogy where whole hills are moved for coal. And we don't want to see that happen here. If something got valuable, certain level of value, at some point you don't have to come up with that, but to do that, it may not be a good idea. It's a good idea.
Right, except that every new mine needs to come in and get a conditional use permit. I mean, and we have not the comprehensive use plan to go back on, the hills and the scenery and all that.
Sure, it is a bit.
I mean, so it is a bit redundant. I mean, we could turn down the application because they're going 100 and some feet deep, and we've got all kinds of backing in our comprehensive use plan, and we can turn that down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have
So I'm concerned about, I don't know, what you're going to say X amount of yards that you can't do. How are we going to go out and measure that? Even necessarily, we need to look at it, but I don't know what figure you'll put there.
It was, we had about that.
Okay.
What the deal, if we had some big board, figure out what the sand is on these things where it started, you'd say if it's more than 50 feet under the ground, maybe you gotta leave it there. You know, because some of the sand, like in Wisconsin, it's at the surface almost. But here, there's sand in all of the hills. And if we really got value, we really just dig down and take top of the hills out. I mean, part of the reason we live here is because we have hills.
Yeah, I see what you're going at, but just look at the last sand mine that we approved. They were at 1290, and they wanted to go down to 1170. So they were taking off 20 or 30 feet of overburden, and then they were going down to the elevation of 1170. So, I mean, each site's going to be somewhat unique, you know, and the planning commission of the county board is going to have to approve that. And they got the comprehensive land use to fall back on, and, you know, there may be a site where they only have a 10-acre footprint, but they want to go 150 feet deep. Well, if they're up on site, maybe it's better that they only have a 10-acre footprint to go deep, you know. Possibly. Yeah, every site is different.
You would be, if we do it in cubic yards, you would be considering, the area too, because if you're talking 10 acres, very deep versus 100 acres, not very deep.
Yeah, well, we don't want 100 acres, not very deep. We'd like to see a small footprint.
Sure.
Well, you're limited, like say, in a sand mine, you're limited to 20 acres, so let's say you got a 10 acre footprint, where are you going to put all this overburden? I mean, by the time you get done moving all the overburden, running out of 10 acres is pretty much used up, so you've gone down so far, you're going to run out of space.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Just limiting the area where you're going to put it. Yeah. Unless I suppose you haul it off site, but.
Can't do that.
Absolutely.
Kind of here, comes up.
But the trouble with it being, you've got a hill, it's got sand, and you're talking sand mine in a hole. You've got a hill, but you can cut the whole hill down, and not, the depth isn't as noticeable because the hill's coming down and they're making a big depression. So rather than go volume, why not go depth?
Well, we are proposing limiting the area.
Right.
We can't have to go over there.
The depth of the over. If you got a 20 acre.
So what number would you pick? On what basis would you pick that number? We need, if we do something like this, we have to have very good reasons for doing it.
Right.
So if we pick a number, we gotta have a number that's based on some reality. Yeah.
You've got places like, coming down over there right down by Houston, it's not a very big area, you can get pulled out of it off the soil and be inside that 20 acres.
So again, what do you think should be in here?
This is a real arbitrary number, I don't know how to.
But it also is another way, sometimes we haven't been very true to our comprehensive land use plan. And it's also another tool just to try to keep a handle on the product. Just one more tool. We don't actually even have to have it.
You could say something like that shall be considered, and then it would just be a reminder that the planning commission needs to look at that without actually coming out with a kind of site-by-site basis rather than coming up with a number now.
Well, how many acres do you have open at a time?
There's no requirement on how much you have open. If your line is permitted for 50 acres, they're all open right now.
I thought we had a limit. We put it on by, like the quarter.
As a condition of the permit.
Yeah, okay.
That was based on their application though. So yeah, it varies site to site.
Well, I guess I'm thinking the area of, you said you had an open area with so much depth of overburden, you can figure it. I couldn't figure it out, but I mean, you get the area of an acre, and then figure how much overburden is in there.
The question is how deep is an appropriate
Yes.
to allow? And that's-
Yeah, so if you're gonna allow an acre, then you know how far you're gonna put out. Well, you don't know, but I mean, that's how you figure the quantity.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
want to say 5, 10 feet? I mean, I don't know that.
I thought when you proposed this, you were looking at preventing what I would call, something.
But it's confusing because the bill's going to allow that, and it's a lot of people, just working, stop working beside it, whatever. And that's the order out there. So it's pretty interesting to figure out how you put it.
Yeah.
Should we let this go out there so we kind of suggestions we get from the public?
Yeah.
I don't know, the question raised is legitimate. I don't have a handle on how it should do that. You know. But they open for suggestions on that one.
Maybe we'll get back to it, they want to, hey, what do you think this?
We'll
take it out.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody will find some value to don't.
Okay. We gotta think about that too, if there's some other way we can work that. I see where you're coming in. You think, since you were the author of this, you come up with another way come up with another way of saying that, would you?
Staying in operational performance standards, we would be adding, actually, would be number 5 here, that one stays, mine area standards. The maximum cumulative total excavation area permitted by a single permit shall be as follows. Permits for the excavation and mining of gravel, stone, or other non-metallic minerals shall be in sites of less than 40 acres. Permits for the excavation and mining of sand shall be on sites of less than 20 acres. So this is essentially saying, when we issue cups, they're going to have 20 or 40 acre increments. So they could be bigger than 20 or 40, but they would be permitted in those increments.
Well, less than 40, but if you ended up like 2 rock quarries, first of all, we probably want to see the first rock quarry spent before we don't say that, but for most cases, I think it would make sense that if there was a rock quarry that went up to 39 acres, that it was permitted to 39 acres, but they're only up to 22 or 3, but they wouldn't be applying for another 40 until they got that renewal used up. But if they did, we'd have to stop them. But then it would become connected phased operation, and then it would be part of the AW, and we could look at it.
It's during those, again, we had a lot of conversation about various schemes to bring in a density requirement. It seems very complicated to do that in a good way to work it. It's often, maybe if you want these sites, rather than sprinkle 20 or 40 acre sites are up too much, you want them somewhat concentrated in an area, but really they would be based on site-by-site evaluation. So leaving it at this, it's the planning commission and on board to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis. Seems to be a crisis. No, that's suggesting it's a crisis of action.
Regarding sand mines, I mean, if we have a 20-acre sand mine that's spent, everything is gone, and there's another one next to it, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be permitted. But if you have one that's just been permitted, another one open up another one right next to it, no, I don't think that should be permitted. Because I think with our comprehensive use plan, we've got enough in there, maybe we could add some language to that down the road, you know, to discourage large scale sand mining, so we could add that in the comprehensive use plan. And mainly concentrate on ag and construction sand, you know. But, you know, any new applications that have to come before the planning commission and the county board, and if there's a sand mine right there already, and it's satisfying the market, you know, the next one may not be permitted, obviously, you know. But,
So I have concerns about the density issue as far as that goes, but what justification if I own a piece of land and there's got a piece next to me and they both have sand, I have a sand mine, he wants a separate one, you can just say no to him because there's already one next door. I mean, there's an issue that way.
yeah, no, not necessarily, but, I mean, if you go within your plan, you got, the demand is there for ag construction sand, and the county is in need of that. Like, we just approved the one that Spring Grove just got approved, because the one that got loaded is shut down, it's slowly shut down. And as long as you're not connected in phased operations, we are truly two independent operators, and your plan is for ag construction sand, and you want to be competitors, yeah, you might get approved.
And you're talking theoretical, this would prevent that, but I think Dan's talking about if what would happen when a person came in, we're not outlining what actions have to happen when permits come in. I guess we're saying here that this is going to be the maximum size of permit at a time with one permit, and then it's going to be up to the planning commission and on board to make those determinations if that exact situation happens. If two people have adjacent operations and both trying to permit them at the same time, to have to review the facts and figure out if that's in accordance with the this new language would be and the comp plan. And
Then another question I have is, in the case of, and you see it fairly often that somebody's got a sand mine or an aggregate mine and they want to expand the mine and so it's going to go beyond 40 acres. Do we have a regulation that they have to reclaim one played out area before they can move on to another?
we don't have a regulation. We have the requirements of like the ability to set reclamation bond, which would be tied to the number of non-reclaimed acres. So we have the ability to incentivize them to do that. And whenever one came in, the planning commission, a condition could always be added as it was. It dictates how many acres can be open, or how much area can be open at any one time.
So we wouldn't put anything like that where in order to expand, you have to reclaim and maintain your acreage of mining.
I think that'd be a very reasonable condition if the planning commission was going to permit an expansion. It would be very reasonable to add that to
So
the
not
condition.
something we would put in.
Once we put it here, then flexibility on anything, and that might be, it might somewhat be site dependent, oftentimes.
Sometimes more flexibility is good.
Yeah, I know. I'm open to, I'm open to suggestions there if we want to try something like that.
But if you look at it, again, especially on the rock course, it's going to be market driven. And if there is 80 acres that has rock there, that could be mined, and you wanted to permit on each one, I think limiting it to less than 40 acres, that forces us and everyone to look at each application in 40-acre increments. And it's not a taking as such, because they're not, if the second 40, for some reason, has a different set of neighbors, they're close to a stream, or it has other situations, it may get denied, may or may not, it depends on what the market is. But at least if we put this language in there, the county can look at it then in 40-acre segments, or 20-acre segments, or saying. Right now, we don't have any way of doing that.
I guess I look at it from the point of view that if I've got a 40-acre mine and I'm going to want to expand another 40 acres, that means this 40 acres is played out. Shouldn't that be reclaimed as you move forward?
Well, like Aaron said, you'd be incentivized to do that. I mean, we can have the reclamation plans, which if you don't have the one you're working on reclaimed.
You know, actually, under this proposed language, that would be a requirement, because we're saying that the maximum area for any one permit, cumulative area for any one permit, will be 140. So if you want to expand, that'll be done by getting a second independent permit, and you would be required to reclaim. Your reclamation has to be in 6 months after the abandonment or the completion of the mining and the existing facility. So yes, you'd be doing your expansion through a new permit, and the rules of reclamation on your old permit will kick in when you exhaust the area that was permitted.
Let's say there was kind of weak. Okay, let's say that there was 5 or 10 acres left under the original permit channel, and just for continuity of operation, the applicant wanted to get the next 40 permitted, and his plan was there, what he was going to do it and so forth. I don't see any problem why he couldn't. If it met all the other requirements, why the next 40 acres couldn't be permitted before he had the last 40 totally exhausted. Because certainly he wanted to have an ongoing operation. But again, the more he left open, the higher it would be, more expensive it would be for him, because the amount of the reclamation plan would be based on how much open area it is. And again, these are site specific, so the planning commission and the county board are going to have to look at each one of these. But with this language, it forces the county board and the planning commission to look at it 40 acre increments. Okay? Go ahead.
If we leave it, so you've done 35, right?
Yeah.
And now he wants to finish his 5, he wants to start the other 40, okay? If we don't have some language that makes that reclamation plan kick in, he gets the permit for the other 40, he never has to finish any of it. And then he can do, okay, so now he's got his 40. We can go back and say, okay, now you have to reclaim the entire 40 that you started with before you continue with this next 40 expansion.
Yeah, just so you didn't break continuity of operations. I mean, if he's set up the business, he's got to keep going, yeah.
Well,
There is a requirement when it kicks in.
each of these is a conditional use permit, right? I suppose then you get one of the 40, but if you would do an additional 20, you can still have 40 and fill in, reclaim the previous 20, and you have all the time 40 open.
Right.
Keep moving along the 20 acre increments.
Here's the language on reclamation, commencement requirement. All mining sites shall be reclaimed after the mining operations cease. Reclamation shall be complete 1 calendar year after operation ceases. Reclamation must commence when any of the following conditions occur: within a period of 3 months after the termination of a mining operation within 3 months after abandonment of such operation for a period of 6 months. So really, that's 9 months right there. If the county was in a position where we wanted to compel reclamation and there had no activity on site for 9 months, you could use that and say you need to start reclaiming. Oftentimes, I would suspect that periods of 9 months occur and the county would not want to compel reclamation. But I think that's a tool there that you're asking, could we compel someone to reclaim? I think we could use that to do so in the network where we county wanted to do that.
That's in the case of a non-active mine.
Well, it's abandoned.
As an expansion of a mine, it's, the existing mine is still active because you're using that to access to the expansion. So you can't compel them to do the reclamation. So you could have a 40 to a 40 to a 40, it's all going to be considered part of the same mining operation. It's not abandoned.
Yeah, I mean, it could just keep going on and on.
Okay, what do we have right now?
We don't have much, and
No.
we have actually some recommendations. Well, we haven't held very negative anything. So the idea that all of a sudden now we're going to start, I don't know if that's reasonable. Because that, okay, that 40, not just a permit for another 40, but they never actually had, because we don't want to slow things down. We don't want to, you don't have to reclaim the original 40. We just permitted basically an 88%.
Even if you go over.
We're working on 5,
Yeah.
right? So that's still the permitted line.
Yeah.
Because you're still working on it, so that's the way. Now, we've got another point that you just said, okay, I'm just starting this one. This is going to be 40, but it's really
Even when it goes over 40, you need to be triggered.
Yeah.
No, if they're,
If you want to do 80, lots planned under 8, lots start 40, then move it to 70.
no, if they're connected to phase, you got to do an
What's
EAW.
the
It means that one is phased in or connected to the same owner, same operator, same proposer. What's that? Well, I can see that, yeah, but I think not.
We can't do that, that's the county cannot, no way around, it would overrule the state requirements, it really does. But to your point, that's theoretically possible, so there's so many checks that would, planning commission and would require the reclamation as a specific condition. The abandonment here, that can be determined by zoning administrator or adjustments. So I think there's enough tools in the toolbox that if a situation arose where the county wanted to compel reclamation, you could, and also we'll be moving forward with some reclamation bonding requirements at some point, and that's what we're economic incentives to go over that.
So, man, the county clearly recommending that doesn't mean anything that's going to happen. It's not.
Correct. I don't think we want to have a blanket rule where we compel reclamation maybe 9 months of activity, because if our activity isn't occurred for 9 months, that's probably quite common under permitted sites. So I think we would only be using this in a situation where it's a unique situation and it becomes obvious that the applicant is trying to serve the requirements as we designed them. At that point, I think it would become a tool. Or if it seems like they're not providing intentionally, we can keep it open. That might be abandoned if there's simply no economic, there's no need for a product for a period of time, but it's a permanent facility, that wouldn't be abandoned. But I think there's got to be some discretion being exercised in the administration's ordinance and regulate where it's
Who starts the clock on when operations? I mean, you could resolve lots of
mean, a lot of these rules, I think, are, if the county becomes aware, we become aware, and problem solved. We start looking into it, start documenting things, and as soon as we can document it, back when the time clock, we started, we're not policing it, it's science. I mean, no, but there's so many requirements there, it's never happened. A lot of this I do is, these are tools that we use when the situation calls for it. In terms of 100% policing all rules here, that's absurd expectation.
Okay, any other questions?
One more thing. Yep. On the minor area standards for maximum minor area, could we add that excavation and South Island, just to that one too, or not just excavation, generally just big. This is on number 1 and 9, page 124.
Page 124. So you're looking under the,
Operation
operation 126.
It's on 127 on you got a little
Mine area standards. You want to read permits for the excavation, or stockpiling, or excavation, mining, or stockpiling, and that was your
So actually, the first sentence is maximum cumulative total excavation and stockpile.
Okay. All right. Anything else on areas?
Okay, we'll post that.
Moving on to the screening requirements. This clarifies ambiguity that's currently in the ordinance. So we're going to specifically call out to number 1 that we're talking about residential and commercially zoned properties. And then, because we're falling outside the zone properties, we're adding a number 2, we're adding a setback that may be required between a mining operation and an existing well, well, an existing water permit requirements. That's correct.
Why would there be there?
I guess it's somewhat site specific, and it could be existing screen. There's literally, even if there's existing screen, we have a lot of screening. It could be a long distance of screening that doesn't need to be that long, so there could be a hill or another sort of feature already providing screening. Something like this is, I guess it's cue to the planning commission to take a look at that and consider whether it's necessary.
It could also be an expansion or something, re-permitting, which would be classified then as a new permit. And, you know, if it was a quarter-mile distance or something, we may, you know, I mean, it's like something we absolutely have to look at.
I understand what you're saying as far as site specific. But would it not be better to say that for all mining sites permitted after the adoption of this ordinance, it requires the screening area to be maintained between the mining sites? There's no main, it requires the screening to be maintained. If it's already there, fine and dandy, but if it's not, you have to put it in. But you still have to maintain it.
Okay, but I'm looking at a permit that we just issued outside California. It was a new, it was been there for 50 years. The house came last 8 years. So then they wanted to expand, so they, it was at 1,000 feet. But you couldn't see the line right in the house, because the line was down over the hill. We're going to require it to be, it's going to get triggered in any new line. That's why maybe May is better, because we decide site by site whether or not we need it.
You know, also, besides site by site by site, one of the last conditions that you don't need.
Well, that says shall here, and you can't, I don't think you can remove it.
If it's an ordinance, it's an ordinance.
If it's down over the hill, it's very.
Well, it's not screening, screening is trees.
Well,
Another thing to think about is if you're likely going to be permitting some non-conforming sites, we don't want this type of, there you could have a situation where line could hit the house, but the permit will come after the house. It would be counterproductive to disincentivize folks, mine operators, or going through the process. Because
You think the screening would disincentive?
I mean, every extra little thing, I think, is a disincentive.
I think we need to look at it in every case. I mean, we do.
That's a house, and that's why, that's why I think it's a case by case basis, whether it's an actual necessity, this is guidance or planning commission come to board to look at.
Any other questions?
I still prefer required screening to be maintained rather than may require.
I think we'll over that.
Why don't we,
I guess to follow this point, if you look at public roads, it shall be, it's required. Definitely required.
What is it?
Right below it says, senior shall also be maintained.
why don't we take it, include both? I'll add Bob's suggestion now, and it will show the current language is crossed out, and we'll put that out there. See if we can, get a comment on the other, they might stay close.
I would appreciate that.
So it will read the music program, for all 96 permitted activity adoption is ordinance. Actually, it's like all 96 code activity items or shall maintain screening between 96 and existing building located within 1,000 feet.
There's no screening.
Well, that means they'll, it's also, there is screening that exists.
But if there's a, well, we can talk about it next month. But if there's a topographical feature or something that separates the motion, well, screening is defined as trees, swing trees here. Yeah. Some,
It's not the definition, it's right after the sentence.
so, I mean, but anyway, we talk about it next month, I'm not sure. Why is every situation?
Okay, subset and setback requirements. Adding language that makes the setbacks reciprocal for districts, so if it's prohibited in a district, 100, prohibited district 100 feet to the boundary of any district where mining operations are not permitted. So if we were looking at rezoning in an area reserved mine, this reciprocal setback would setback. Number 2 is residentially zoned. So again, we'd be looking at encountering a situation where we have a proposed amendment to rezone either industrial or ag land, and there's an existing mining facility. We'd be looking at a situation where variancing or setting back farther. And since dust and noise, this is also modified, but situation dust and noise producing processing or loading shall not be conducted closer than 1,000 feet to any dwellings existing prior to the issuance of the mineral extraction permit. So that needs a little more attention, I guess, because obviously we're looking at permitting and files that exist prior to the mineral extraction permit. I think what I'm intending to do there is require new homes to also be subject to the setback, but not an existing home. So that would perhaps go down to number 7, number 6 setback. For instance, it's not limited to dwellings that existed prior to the issues of permits. That would not issue that.
Any questions on that?
So you're going to add a 7.
Well, I'm going to have to, that can be a reciprocal setback, I suppose. Are there any ideas of how to insert language that would require a setback from an existing line for a new house?
It's just going to do all this. You're not going to check within that 1,000 feet or.
I'll say boundary to the foundation.
Somebody could request a variance.
Yes, absolutely.
The property owner of the line could request a variance to go closer to the line than 1,000.
So now the sub-7 or rate setback requirements, sub 1 and 2 are reciprocal. And you added number 7, dwellings, new dwellings shall not be constructed within 1,000 feet of existing line. We also have a change there in the adjoining property line. It reads not closer than 50 feet to the boundary of an adjoining property line unless the written consent of the owner of such adjoining property line is first secured, or added to that, is first secured and recorded with the county recorder. And I've been requiring that without being the ordinance prior to the last meeting. So it's just to ensure the property changes hands, that there aren't questions, no others. And then I changed to number 6. And it currently reads, dust and noise producing, processing, or loading shall not be conducted closer than 1,000 feet to the boundary of any residential structures existing prior to the implementation of the reclamation plan. We're changing that to dust and noise producing, processing, or loading shall not be conducted closer than 1,000 feet to any dwelling existing prior to the issuance of the mineral extraction permit. And that's really, it didn't make a lot of sense later. Once they implement the reclamation plan, they may be nearly finished.
Except that would stop an existing mining from expanding. If there was a house there.
Okay.
That's that one that direction.
All right.
That's what I do now.
What if
So you add language, because if we were in line, that would already be a requirement anyway. This will, there's probably an existing site, it might be within the house currently.
So what if a house got a variance to come within 500-600 feet? And now the mine wants to expand.
Well, there's an expansion, which is a lot, but it's currently,
That means he could expand. He can, I guess he can expand it over because the house there.
well, what happens in a situation, or if we have any situations where mine boundary is within 1,000 feet.
Right, now he gets a new permit, we're gonna make him get out of there.
Well, a new permit, but it kicks in, but without a new permit, you should be considered violations in this, if it's already occurring, right, to say, it wouldn't be, I don't think. But maybe we want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify that, because if you have an existing mine that wants to expand, so he gets a new pop, then he'd be declared a new mine. It's a new permit. And if there was a house that came within the 1,000 feet barrier, you theoretically, if you don't clarify it, you'd be telling the miner he had to get back up to 1,000 feet, even though he's minus.
So my thoughts would be, they couldn't go any closer, even if they said they're right.
Okay.
They couldn't go any closer, but they would be considered a violation. Because, what if we're talking about a good picture wall, something that needs to be moved around or rectified.
Okay, why don't you put that language in there? We'll see these guys.
These guys got to close up shop
So if there's a house at 1,000 feet, the existing mine cannot move closer to the house. That's it. If a house was to be built within 1,000 feet, that house would have to have a variance, and the property owner of the mine would have notification that this house is going to be built, or proposed to be built. That would be taken in the public hearing for the variance, that would be taken into consideration.
Right. Let's say the variance is granted.
Right.
So let's say the house is built at 700 feet. Now, let's say the mine wants to expand. So he has to get a new permit. So now, if we don't have the language clarifying that, he's 300 feet in now on the 1,000 foot setback. Does that mean we want to tell him he's got to abandon 300 feet of his mine that he's been mining? No, we got to have some language there that he can't expand any closer to that house, but he can stay where he's at. Meaning he can expand off in another direction maybe, but.
Right. I guess that's why the public hearing would have a bearing on that, because the mine owner would say, hey, I don't X number of feet.
I know, but if we're going to make this ordinance, we need to clarify it in the ordinance if we're going to make it. If it's an ordinance, it's an ordinance, so we got to be very careful how it's worded.
So, what are your thoughts on this? Mining operations in existence at the time of this ordinance was a permit to stock or expansion shall not be subject to this requirement, shall not expand closer to any existing ordinance.
Within 1,000 feet.
You got the variance.
Yeah, it would be whatever I don't, that's, we can discuss about that, it's,
That would be argument my owner can make prior to the granting of variance.
Right, that would be, in the case, or
The variance could have a condition on allowing mine to move closer at the board's discretion.
I think we would want to have this designed in a way that would allow that, to allow the board to move those one way or the other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can we go back to zoning?
Yes.
So we say this, all lines that submitted as a this ordinance is soon to area, or an actual document of future must be maintained to be understood. That way, it's something very much like
All right. For all nine sites, permit have to be out in this ordinance.
a zoning barrier or an actual topographic feature. Must be maintained 39 feet.
Okay, so I have it for all lines that are permitted after the adoption of this ordinance, a screen barrier or natural topographic feature shall be maintained between the mine site and existing dwellings located in that feet.
When you're on the public roads, just allow the topographic feature in there also.
Yeah, I guess that's what's been, that's how it's been applied. Maybe we want to clarify that.
Yes, it's the same term there is.
That's of 10, dust lines.
Supposed to be dust and noise, dust and dirt.
Sorry, dust dirt, yeah, dust dirt.
Noise cancellation.
I revise this to read, all equipment used for mining operations shall be constructed, maintained, and operated in such a manner as to minimize, as far as practical, as to minimize dust conditions as far as practical. Language here was inconsistent with some of the setback requirements elsewhere in this section. And it's hard to determine what's injurious or substantially annoying. It just seems
Subjective.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. us to be doing. They run with the land.
Any questions on that?
As a specific condition on any permit, you can add that it needs to be reviewed periodically. But what's not permissible is the point is that all houses of a certain nature have that. Well, I guess there is some ambiguity, there's a question as to whether that's permissible or not. The opinions that have been expressed being at various conferences regarding this topic, I think you cannot blanket state and say that you need to be removed on a 5-year basis. But if you specifically put that condition on any one condition of this permit, then that is valid, you do that.
What I would like to see to help with this situation, because where we run into this is somebody comes in and gets a conditional use permit for borrow for a road project. And we give them a cup that goes with the land, and the project is only going to last for a year. I think we need to put that interim language in here for those projects that are temporary, small projects. Because I think we got a situation going on right now where a cup was granted in 1982 or something, and then now the guy's coming back thinking that he's legitimate to do something. And he hasn't done anything all that while. You know, I think that we need to have another section in for interim permits to deal with these short-term projects. And we had some language like that in our original proposal. You could look at that language if you wanted to have that. And I'm open to the numbers we put in there, but certainly these road projects and so forth, those should be interim. They should not be conditional permits.
Are you thinking that's something to try to
Yes.
deal with?
Yes.
In this round of edits?
Most it, yes.
How would we go about to connect to that?
If we have consensus on the planning commission that we should do that, I think we should make it part of this change, effort to change this ordinance. That was an interim, but that was where, that is already talked about in our interim permits. But in our interim permits, we don't talk about the short-term projects. For example, removing the wall of the Oka. We issued a conditional use for that. That should have been an interim. It's a one-time deal. It's over, it's done with, no more, it doesn't want. Where we get these guys coming in 30, 40 years later, say, I got a cup back in the 1980s, I can do whatever I want. That's not what it was designed to do. So I think we have consensus, we'd like to add that language in here. Introduce permits for these road power projects, and you put a number on there, and then we'll get feedback.
Sure.
And then we'll discuss it in the next meeting.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Under the next section, renewal and review, changing the title of this subsection to just review. And it shall read, each conditional permit shall be periodically reviewed by the zoning administrator. Period. Upon determination by the zoning administrator with the county board, the operation is in violation of the provisions of the conditional use permit or other county ordinances. A hearing may be held to review the existence of any alleged violations. Period. An examination of the premises can be made by the zoning administrator at any time. So that's an addition, that's one we just pulled on from above, and that's actually deleted entirely. And prior to these changes, it was calling for 5-year reviews. It may be that we have the need to review them more frequently than that, or if you don't have the staffing to review them as frequently as that, changing it periodically allows that flexibility.
Any questions?
On determination of the zoning administrator or county board that an operation is in violation of the provisions of the conditional use permit or other county ordinances, a hearing may be held if zoning is determined that there's a violation. Why would you not have a hearing?
Well, again, this would kick us over to section 10, we're in the process of certifying non-compliance to the county board. If the zoning administrator is certified non-compliance to the county board, and the county board at their discretion would hold hearing. We have it as an agenda item. If you change that to shall, I guess I look at this, if you have a situation where the board's been aware of the facts on the ground, and they have the data in there, so they can choose whether or not to hold a hearing. If they choose not to hold a hearing, it's a pretty good bet that if they were required to hold a hearing, they would find an outcome that would find the person in violation if they didn't want to hold a hearing in the first place.
Well, even so, if there was a requirement to hold hearing, it could be short. They don't want to do anything about it, it could be a really short hearing. But at least it would set process in motion that whenever comes into complaint, would know that something is going to happen.
I think with an extent to on the severity of the violation, and does that preclude, I mean, having the necessary of a violation, does that preclude the zoning administrator going out there, making them aware and voluntarily correct the problem and everything, you know?
Yeah, practically speaking, I think that in a situation like that, it would be
Probably would get to the point.
hearing.
Okay.
Whatever we do here, I think that it needs to be consistent with the violation penalties and enforcement section. And if we want to change this, I suppose it could be changed to something above and beyond that. But it seems to be in continuity between.
But it says if it's determined by the zoning administrator, you're the zoning administrator, you're the enforcement officer. So it's either you or the county board. And if you determine that there is a violation, the conditional use permit or other county ordinances, the hearing may be held to review the existence of alleged violations. But what if you determined that there was a violation, but it might have been an oversight or something, and you got it corrected? Why would we be required to have a public hearing? Again, that's, what's that?
That's that appeal process.
Yeah.
Adjustment. And then the board of adjustment, they find, they affirm that, then they certify it to the county board.
The Board of Adjustment is?
Well, there's a zoning officer makes a determination, there's that appeal process.
Right.
To which we go to the board of adjustment. Within the quasi-judicial role, or affirm or deny it. And then there's going to be a violation of the law. And then that's certified with the county board.
Essentially, the way I read this is designed for violation of the complaint merit. Withdrawn, it's not a violation where it's a minor violation, and they're told, you need an extra sign, you have trucks over the sign coming out of day. That's something they can rectify just between the zoning office and the operator. I include this language as being the tools you use when you need the zoning administrator's opinion, or in this case, the county board's opinion, the conditional use permit, maybe not be revoked. And that should require, that's why it's required for a hearing. And that's something that I would like somebody wanted to permit is revoked. That's a more serious consequence. You should merit that hearing. It's not for every level of action.
I think May is fine.
But the way you just explained it, in the less serious violation, you as a zoning administrator, you want to get that sort of way. The more serious violations, either you determine it's more serious, or the county board determines it, then it should be shall, not may.
But my understanding is that he goes out and decides it's a less serious one, that he takes action A to the aggrieved landowner that made a complaint. Doesn't like that either in the appeal process or adjustment. That would say override what he said. And Board of Adjustment sustains that, then it will be certified to the board. Or if the Board of Adjustment said, no, he's right, and doesn't certify to the board, then they appeal to the district court.
Whenever goes to the county board.
If it's a violation, if he finds there is a violation, if a violation is found to have occurred, and that if there's an appeal, if there's a violation that's said to occur, he can certify it to the county board. If he finds there isn't one, or if it's rectified, and the agreement landowner doesn't like it, he can appeal an county official decision to the Board of Adjustment. If they find out that he has a pertinent decision, you can go to the district court, or you can go to the county court. It depends whether they find that the violation has occurred.
And then the county board can overrule the zoning administrator at any time. I mean, they could just go over here and
Yeah, that's another option too, right? Is that it doesn't have to be certified, that the county board is put on their agenda to deal with this law.
But it should be, for instance, if we have a standard practice, it would be what I look at one by all state federal law. If somebody is breaking the speed limits, it should not be involved. And by that, it's for the more serious thing that would require someone's driving too fast, that would be a compensation to drive at 6 speeds. It's a condition to follow all state laws. This would be a more serious nature where it would warrant the attention of the county board.
Well, it's repeated, they don't correct. If you go out there and talk to them, they correct it like this, depending on how serious.
Right.
But if they continue to do it, then.
Maybe it takes it to another level. That's a more serious violation. Not sure.
Well, it says a hearing, in a public hearing, could that be at a meeting, at a commissioner meeting?
What I'm saying, that's not real.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, you don't send out notice to do it.
Well, it would either be at a river board meeting or the actual special board meeting. Either way, there has to be, there's legal notices that have to be put out.
All right.
Okay, satisfied? Add something.
Just looking at enforcement, trying to figure out how to flow it. How to put it in the park.
And I can talk to them later after this, Bob.
That'd be fine.
We can probably sometimes it's easier if I go out.
It doesn't solve it. I still think it should be shall not have.
There's different types of infractions, so I don't think you should have one shall. You gotta leave some determination up to the zoning administrator and some determination up to the county board. That's what their job is.
It doesn't say what it's going to happen. It just says that there shall be a hearing. It doesn't say it's going to lose. In this review paragraph, it doesn't say anything about consequences. It says, all it says, this is what I might be reading. Either you or a member of the county board or the county board, and it's found violation. So if it's found violation, why would you have a hearing about that?
Because what if it's truck speeding, like he just said, you're gonna have a public hearing over his truck speeding or something, he's not following the state law. I don't know. You have to determine what kind of violation, yeah.
Everybody wants to pick tiny.
Okay, let's go for everyone, give me an example.
Or maybe you violate the always in the truck there, maybe you're supposed to be on the road 4, 5, 6 times.
Well, I think that in that situation, I would probably, if you're being in this position, I would be referring at that point in time. I think that the most trivial one to illustrate the reason why it shouldn't be shall, because if it's shall, that means even the most trivial situation is supposed to be to the county board. So we have situations where I'm receiving allegations of infractions of a permit or an operator. They don't all need to be resulting in some discretion. Giving on board, otherwise we could, in theory, end up with gridlock during cases of minute infractions.
Well, maybe for you to consider too is that this is a recommendation that you'll send to the county board. You can have, option A and option B, and this is whether it should be shall or may. You can present, and both sides can present to the county board for adoption in this section of the organization. When you have the option to send to
I want to avoid situations where we have shalls here and it doesn't actually happen shall. So I guess I don't want to set it up where we're not prepared and every single time it happens, act it out the way that it says in here.
I understand that, but my concern is that you have situations where you have the word may or shall, and all the time it's, well, we may do this, but we're going to have to, so we're not going to. And over and over and over. That's my concern. I know that county board, because I have a whole bunch of hearings all the time on my interaction. But it may be that's the only way that you can guarantee hearings is all the litigation.
I guess I feel like
That's my opinion. I just like to see Shell and want to be options to the county board.
I think that we can consider that, and then when it comes to the next meeting, right in the moment.
I believe this is the last change. We are in home occupations, and it's being termed a conditionally permitted. It's being termed as conditionally permitted, and they're actually permitted under interim permits, so we're just correcting that.
Okay, moving forward, we're going to get this posted and advertised and published, and get comments, and we're going to have another long meeting in July. Now, do we want to have a separate meeting for this, or do you want to do it on the regularly scheduled meetings? Open for suggestions. Do you want to have 2 meetings next month, or do you want to try to get all done in one? How much do we have on the schedule for next month? You prefer one meeting? All right. You guys prefer one meeting. All right. So most likely that meeting would be July 28th. Okay. Okay. I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bob, second by Jim. All those in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.